Welcome to the Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield on the Rural Radio Network. Picked a good day to talk with Brad Kooima because we've got some good numbers going on the screen. Of course, a variety of different factors are weighing in, including where's all the cattle? Now, I know you and I know where all the cattle is, but of course, that's been a factor been looked at when it looks like show list numbers. And of course, there's weather that's also weighing in. And as I mentioned, Brad Kooima, he's with Kooima Kooima Varilek out of Sioux Center, Iowa. And just a little disclaimer. Brad's phone's going to probably go off while we're talking. Maybe not as crazy as what it was last week, but we are waiting for some information to come in that we will be passing along. Should it go off while we're talking? And Brad, we got to first and foremost to those in agriculture and those who aren't in agriculture in these small towns. My heart breaks. I know so many others do as they're dealing with floodwaters and losing crops that they've planted and replanted, losing livestock or trying to get livestock moved and losing their homes. It's tough times right now in areas of southern Minnesota and northern Iowa.
Well, thanks for your thoughts, Susan. And yeah, my hometown, and I live on the edge of it on a farm, is Rock Valley, Iowa, and it's been on national news. And it's not just our town. There's a lot of other places that are impacted, but I have seen it firsthand, and my family is okay, but so many of them are not.
It's tough. We'll just leave it
your thoughts and your prayers, and I feel kind of, what do you do? What can you do to help them? So many displaced families, and even loss of life in the case of our town, in some cases. So it's a bad deal. So we don't need to break down everybody's day here, but keep your thoughts and prayers for those people that have been impacted. Certainly, we're a resilient group. You should see the small towns around our town. It's. Hey, you need diapers? And then we got too many now. We need kids' clothes. Okay, now we can do very generous, which is why we live in these small towns, which I'm proud to say I've always lived there. So, and yes, my phone is on silent, so I'll try to have better manners. Last week, yeah, the guy that kept calling me even called to apologize. And the cattle salesman, imagine that, wanted me to sell some cheap feeder cattle, right? So anyway, cattle market's been something, huh? We are up $3.60 on June cattle right now as you and I are recording this deal.
So I wanted to ask you about that because there's no news. I mean, there really isn't a lot of news out there right now for this cattle market, but it did take a jump. And let's talk about that. I'll let you finish your thoughts now.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're right. Because people are calling me saying, is there some cash? Is there cash? Thinking that there must be some cash news that all of a sudden kicked this June in gear. If there is, I haven't heard it, and I would suspect that I probably would because we're kind of connected that way. Expectations are for better cash. And I think the whole market got started off on a stronger toehold here Monday when late in the day, Friday, the South finally pulled on their big boy pants and actually held out for a little better money, and got all the way up to as high as 190 on some cattle there, and basically the north was 198-ish. I guess we're up here asking $2 or more. I'd be very surprised if we don't get $2 this week. Kind of a mental, a figure number, right? I expect we'll get that. In fact, I think ultimately we'll exceed that by a little ways. So the supply of cattle continues to be important, and especially important as you look at the supply of cattle across the north. I've given you that smart aleck quote so many times. Hopefully all your listeners have memorized it now. The beginning and the end of all markets start in Iowa, and I guess with the farmer feeder, the general north, and we continue to have a very, very tight supply at a time when usually we have abundant supply of calves. We'd be end of June, we'd be looking at all kinds of cattle. We are anxious to sell. These cattle make some money here. The performance of the cattle has been outstanding because the weather's been so mild up until we had one hot day this week, 95 degrees. So that I think is still a thing, and it comes down to one word: it's leverage. The packer. I gotta wonder what that boardroom's like, Susan. So here's the deal, guys. We got all kinds of meat sold. Demand's really good. Everybody wants to buy middles, and we don't have any cows to kill anymore, so we can't even find enough grind for hamburgers. So I guess we're going to have to grind up some of this fed cattle. And should we cut kill? And everybody looks at each other. Are you nuts? So at some point, sure. I go all the way back to Denison and Plainview. I mean, those two plants closed historically, long time ago. But ultimately, when we have less cattle, somebody's gonna have to go without. I think right now, though, the packers are gonna have to compete with each other, and try to procure these cattle through this good demand period here in the summertime.
I hate to say it, but the cattlemen's known this was going to happen for some time. They kind of saw the writing on the barn wall, shall we say, and now it's playing catch up.
Well, and even then, I mean, we talked about this over and over, the cow herd smallest since 51, the small calf crop and everything else. And then, the broker in me always has to go, but, could have bird flu or something. Who would have thought, or could have World War III, or you could have some, black swan type event that nobody wants to. I know I don't. Nobody wants to go through 2015 again, where you're rolling along at record highs, and then all of a sudden the market goes straight down for 18 months. From a supply side standpoint, this market is still in outstandingly good hands. Wow, 193 on June cattle. How about that? But okay, so be prudent. Options are still a tool here. I think the market, though, continues to trade like the bull market of our career, which is what we were thinking maybe was going to happen here. Kind of fun to be living it.
I say it's nice to be on that side of the fence, but how do you mark? I mean, you look at what you got in your feedlot. At what point do you say, okay, they're not heavy enough, but I'm being offered money for them. I need to send them.
Remind you of 2014 in that capacity, I think, right?
Yep.
They sell anything with the tailhead and a brisket mentality, right? And that's what got us so pulled forward in 2014. That basically we sold the July cattle in June, which is what I think we're doing now. And then in July, we sold the August cattle in July. And that's one of the really fascinating things I think about analytics and cattle. It's so much different than corn, for instance. Like, you got a product, you got so many bushels, you're going to store so much, you're going to eat so much, you're going to make ethanol out of so much, you're going to export. Okay, it's a number, right? You got a beginning supply number. But think about what happens to cattle supply by doing this. Let's say typically a farmer feeder in the north would maybe be barely current. Let's be honest. And sometimes when he's fighting the market, he's selling cattle in June that he should have sold in May because he didn't like the market, right? Well, make them a little bigger. No, the cattle did better than I thought. And so he's 30 days behind on his marketing. Not uncommon at all. Now, what if we're 30 days ahead? You do the math. 2 divided by 12, 2 months divided by 12. All of a sudden, you've changed supply by almost 15%. Just because of whether you're current or not uncurrent. Fascinating to me. Now, the weights are still big, and I think that's because the weather had been good. Now, the weights were down a chunk last week, about 4 or 5 pounds. And I wonder if maybe, and as we now turn into summer and get into these more younger cattle, one would think that the weights would come down. We're going to keep a close eye on that. Right now, there's not enough, I think, hard numbers of supply of cattle that we can handle a little weight, and that's what the market's trying to do. They're still trying to find supply by making them a little bigger.
Well, I know you were waiting for a text message to come in, and I don't know if it has as of yet, but many were concerned about the Dakota City plant because of I-29 and all the flooding in that corridor of those 3 states.
Yeah, and I can't, I'm not infallible on this, but to my knowledge, it's business as usual. I was waiting for a confirmation thing, but I didn't get it here in time for when we were doing it. But as far as I know, as close as you can have business as usual, that they're okay in terms of being able to get trucks in and out of there and stuff like that. So don't hold me to that. If there's something different, I'll text you and you can try to get that out to your people if you need to. But that's my expectation is right anyway. So.
Well, as we wrap this up, I wanted to quickly look at the consumer side of this because they're hearing higher prices going to the cattlemen. What does that equivalent to them going to the grocery store?
Over my pay grade. It's a great question. It's a great question. I'm not sure. We've talked about this. Is it a great big pie and the packer gets this big hunk like he's used to or whatever, and the producer is used to getting this much, right? Is it a pie where, okay, the consumer is going to still consume some of this is going to be inelastic, in my opinion. And I think that's because you've got an economy that's a little different than it used to be. We trained this group of people a little differently because of COVID, so they're all of a sudden starting. Pardon me, I'll put my hands down now. They found out that they could cook their own steak and they could do it 2 times a week or so, maybe 3 for the same cost of going out. And actually, the steak tastes actually better in some cases than what you could buy. So you move the needle that way. But yeah, at some point, my guess is what's going to stop the market isn't that. What's going to stop the market is a packer that says, that's it. We can't fight with this thing. I'm going to shut a plant down. Cargill did Plainview. Tyson did Denison, Iowa, Plainview, Texas. So, is that tomorrow though? I don't think so. I really think that's down the road a ways myself. But the exports were good again last week, and the export demand was good again last week. So, cold storage report down about 14.8 million from the last quarter on the cold storage report. So, it's not like we're having to put it in storage because we can't sell it. So, I don't know. I know it's a worry, but I still don't see. We got the yellow blinkers on, but I don't see the red. I don't see the red light yet.
All right, sounds good, Brad. What's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
kkvtrading.com, or I can turn my phone back on. The office number 712-722-0023. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. A quick reminder, commodity futures and options do involve a substantial risk of loss, not suitable to all investors. Quick note, if you want to assist monetary or more, you can go to disasterrecovery.iowa.gov. That is what is being shared by the state of Iowa for assistance with those flooding victims. That has been this week's Cattle Call on the Rural Radio Network.